In this chapter, we will review a number of crucial cost concepts that we will use in the subsequent chapter that we'll review throughout the semester to analyze the four basic market model. So we're also going to review the implicit and explicit costs in this chapter for the short run and the long run period. But we'll include also in this chapter the concept of the total, average, and marginal cost concept. The law of diminishing returns is explained as well in this chapter, and that helps you to understand the average and marginal cost curve. We're also going to look at the shape of those curves throughout the chapter. So here are the concepts to cover. We'll review the economic costs. We'll look at the long run and the short run production relationship, right? And also at the end, we'll see some applications and the illustration of the concept. So economic costs. Economic costs are the payment that the firm made to obtain and retain the resources that they use to produce the output. Because if you recall, we say that due to the scarcity of resources, we have to use it efficiently, right? So we can maximize the utility. So for a firm to attract a resource from other alternative use, they must make a payment. And the payment is not just to attract, but also to retain that resource. So economic costs over here are those payments that are made. It can be implicit or explicit. Implicit, if you recall the concept of opportunity cost that we talk about, right? So we make a distinction between the implicit and the explicit costs. So the implicit costs here are the payment to the non-owner of the firm, right, to attract the resources used in the production of the output. While the implicit costs are all those monetary payment to self, right? So here you have to think about the opportunity cost, right? Everything that you must forego to be able to produce the output. One good example of implicit cost is if you undertake a business and you use your own basement, for instance, or your own garage, you could rent that garage out and earn money off it. Because of you use it for your own business, you miss that opportunity to rent it out. So that represents implicit cost for you because there's opportunity cost linked to the use of your own resource. So economic costs, we make a distinction between accounting profit and normal profit or economic profit. So economic profit, also called pure profit, right, is the total revenue minus all the costs. Here, the costs are implicit and explicit costs, right, including normal profit. So you will see that the economic profit will always be smaller than accounting profit because accounting profit excludes the implicit cost. And like I said before, the normal profit is just the return to entrepreneur, right, is the amount of money required by the entrepreneur to stay in that particular market. So if you look at this visual comparing economic profit and accounting profit, you will see the difference between them is the implicit cost, right? So economic cost versus economic profit versus accounting profit. The economic profit is equal to the total revenue less economic cost, and that economic cost include implicit and explicit costs. Well, when we move to the accounting profit, is your total revenue minus just accounting cost, which is only the explicit cost. So short run and a long run. So the short run is a period of time, look at it as a period of time too brief for a firm to alter the plant capacity, for instance, right? It's too short for the plant to change the plant capacity, right? But they have enough time to be able to change some of the variable input. So again, it's subjective to the industry, but look at it as the short run is too short for a firm to alter those plant size, but it's enough time for the firm to impact some of the variable or input. While the long run is a period of time that's long enough for the firm to adjust as well as the plant size, right? They can decide to leave the industry if they are not making any profit, or to enter a different industry, right? So in the long run, all input become variable. There's no fixed input anymore. So one of the primary characteristic of the long run is that it's enough time for the firm to do whatever they want to do to adjust to the market, right? Enter or exit the industry, for instance. And they can change the capacity, they can change the size to be able to adapt to the need of the market. The production relationship reflect here how the labor and output are related in the short run. The total product, TP, is the total of quantity that is produced. Again, TP, total product, is the total quantity of output produced. The MP, the marginal product, the MP, is the amount that the total product change when a label, for instance, we use the input resource as a label change by 1 unit. So if you change the input resource by 1 unit, what gonna the impact of that change in the total product, right? We define the margin as extra. So that reflect the change in the output when 1 more unit of labor is added. While the average product, noted here, AP, is the output per unit of labor, right? The output produced per unit of labor. So a lot of diminishing return state here that as a successive variable resource is added to a fixed resource, the marginal product of the variable resource will decrease. Okay. Essentially here, a fixed plan, the explanation is that a fixed plan get overcrowded, right, with a variable resource. So if you think about it, you keep adding successive variable resource to a fixed plan, what's gonna happen is they're gonna be over capacity, right? It will exhaust all the excess capacity and it will be over capacity. Once it gets to that level, you will see that is send that diminishing return on those additional unit of variable resources that you are adding to it. Okay, so another way to look at this law of diminishing return, as if you continue, as a firm continue to hire more and more labor, the total product, what's going to happen to the total product? The total product is rising, right? The first, you will see it will be rising at a increasing amount, right? Because of the machinery is being used, you have that excess capacity, right? But at certain point, once you get to full capacity, you exhaust all those excess capacity. What you realize is you have much labor, right, added to that fixed resources. So you will sense that overuse and the labor had to wait. People had to wait in the line to be able to use necessary equipment because you add more labor to a fixed capital or entrepreneur, you add more labor to those other fixed resources. Now those labor had to wait to be able to use those equipment, and those gonna impact the productivity. So that's where you will see that a diminution in marginal return, right? Where the total product will still increasing when you add more, but it will increase not as much as the previously increase you see. It will increase at that diminution rate. So if we look at it in this table here, so you can see that at the first here, the total product increase at increasing rate, right? And if you look at the marginal, the red curve is a marginal product here. That's increasing in marginal return. If you look at the marginal return here, the marginal product is increasing in marginal return here, right? The marginal product is increasing and we get to the peak, right? Get to the peak. So this area when the total product is increasing at increasing rate, it translates to increasing in marginal return. And you can see here that the marginal product also is increasing, right? So then what we see over here is the total product continue to increase, but at diminishing rate, not like the first section of the graph, right? And translate to here is a diminishing marginal return, right? And the marginal product is decreasing, right? Diminishing marginal return. And it get to a point when the total product get to the peak and now start to decline. And when you have that, you will see here that the marginal product is a negative, and that is a negative marginal return. So the graph A here illustrates the law of diminishing return. I state that as a successive amount of a variable resource. In our example over here, labor added to a fixed amount of other resources like land or capital beyond a certain point, the extra or marginal product that derive from it, from each additional unit of a variable resource will decline. Okay, and the marginal product is the change in the total product associated with each additional unit of labor. The average product, we define the average product simply as the output per unit of labor. Right. Another thing to notice here in graph B is that the marginal product intersects the average product at the maximum average product. So you see that the marginal product here intersects the average product at the maximum. So fixed, variable, and total cost are the short-run classification of costs, right? Because of the fixed cost. In the short run, cost can be variable or fixed in the short run. Example of a fixed cost are the rental payment, insurance premium, or interest payment. Variable costs are costs such as payment of raw materials, fuel, power, transportation, service, and labor. And the total cost is the summation of the fixed cost and the variable cost at each level of output produced. So this table shows you the total cost. We have the total cost on the left side and the average cost in this section and the marginal cost, right? So fixed cost, fixed, that's constant, and you have a variable cost, total variable cost, they vary with the output, and total cost over here is the sum of total fixed cost and total variable cost. The average fixed cost, right? The fixed cost divided by output, and the average variable cost, you use the same logic, and the average total cost here again is take the total cost, right? Take the total cost and you divide it by the output to get a average total cost, right? And the marginal cost here is a change in the total cost by the change in the output. So total fixed cost, TFC, is independent of the level of output, right? Because it's a constant now, it's a constant, so it doesn't vary with the output. The total cost is, as defined before, is the sum of fixed cost and variable cost. Total variable cost change with output. Right? And since here you see that the two curve over here, the total cost and the total variable costs are similar, right? And parallel, and with the difference between them because the total cost is greater than the total variable cost by the fixed cost, which is a constant number. Right. Let's review per unit, or what we call also we refer to as average cost. These per unit costs are useful variable to make a comparison to the product price. So the average fixed cost reflects the fixed cost per unit produced, whereas the average variable cost reflect the variable cost per unit of output produced. The average total cost, right, can also be found by adding the average fixed cost to the average variable cost. Right. The marginal cost here is very important for the firm to know. Right? It's a very important decision-making tools for the firm, right? Why? Because of it shows you how much you need to produce, right? Before the cost start increasing. So the marginal cost reflect the additional cost associated with producing one more unit of labor, right? Producing one more unit of output. So if you want to keep producing more, you need to keep eyes on the marginal cost, because once the marginal cost start increasing, mean that you don't need that additional unit you want to produce. So it will help you to know exactly how much you need to produce if you compare the marginal cost to the previous level of production where you were before you decide to keep producing more. Because if now by producing more, it add more to your cost line, probably it might not be a good decision by producing that additional unit. So the marginal cost essentially measure the rate of change in the total cost. So if we look at the curves of the average cost, you see that the average fixed cost will fall as a given amount of, as we produce more output, because we will leverage the cost. As we produce more output, the average fixed cost will fall. Right. So average variable cost will also average variable cost will also initially fall, and it will get to a certain level, right? And you will see that it will start increasing. Why? Because initially this decrease in the average variable cost is due to that increasing marginal return, right? Because you keep producing more, and the cost compared to the product that you are getting out of it, you're getting more, right? By incurring those additional costs. So that translates here by this decrease in the average variable cost. That decrease over here in the average variable cost. And it get to the level, the bottom, and it will start to then increase it. So the average total cost, which is again here, I show you as the vertical sum of the average variable cost and the average fixed cost, right? The only difference between the average total cost and the average variable cost is the average fixed cost, right? So the relationship of the marginal cost curve to the average total cost and the average variable cost. So shift in the curve will happen if either of resource price or technology change. For one good example is if fixed costs increase, you will see that above average fixed costs and average total cost will shift up. If labor costs or any other variable input costs rise, then the average variable cost and the average total cost and marginal cost also will shift up, right? And this graph shows the relationship of the marginal cost curve to average total cost and average variable cost. So the marginal cost, the MC curve, cut through the average total cost, ATC, right, and the average variable cost, AVC, at the minimum point, right? At the minimum point. And when the marginal, the light blue one over here, when the marginal cost is below the average total curve, if it's below the average total curve, right? So the average total cost falls, right? When it's above, it starts rising, right? A similar thing when the MC, right, is below the average variable cost. You see, that's why the average variable cost decreases, right? And when it's above, increase, right? So marginal decisions are very important factor for business to determine what level to produce, right? And what level to produce ultimately the level of profit, right? In order to make a marginal decision, marginal revenue and marginal costs are compared. I will talk about before the marginal analysis. Right? The marginal cost is a reflection of marginal product and a diminishing return. Because when diminishing return begin, a marginal cost will begin its rise. So the marginal concept is very important for profit maximizing and also decision of the level of output to produce to achieve that particular objective. So the marginal cost MC curve and the average variable cost AVC, right, are a mirror image of the marginal product MP and average product AP, right? So assuming that labor, in this example, labor is the only variable input, right? And its price is, the wage rate is constant. Then the MP is, when the MP is rising, we will see that the MC, right, when the MP is rising, you will see that what's gonna happen to the MC is falling, right? And when the MC is rising, the MP is falling. Right. And same thing here when you see the AP, when the AP is rising, what happened to AVC? So AVC is falling, and when AVC is rising, what happened to AP? AP is falling. So in this graph, you can see that the relative manufacturing costs for selected nation as a percentage of share of world export. Right. Well, one thing we need to note here is a total cost per unit of output can vary substantially from country to country. So now that we look at the long or the short run curve, spend some time on the long run production cost. And for the industry or individual firm, the long run is, as we define it, is a time when they can make adjustment to all the resources. So all the resources become variable, right? Therefore, in the long run, we don't have any fixed costs, right? Because all the costs become variable in the long run. So here you can just make a distinction between the short run when you have the presence of that fixed cost and the long run when you don't talk about fixed costs anymore. So any number of short run optimum size cost curve can be constructed. And the long run average total cost curve is made up of the segment of those short run cost curve. So the long run cost curve is also called a planning curve. So each point of this, each point curve show the lowest unit cost attainable for any output when the firm had make or the desired change to the plan side. So basically the idea here is if you look at the long run, it's made up of this kind of short, the average total cost, short run average total cost for a plan like this, right? You keep producing output until you get to the minimum. Once you get to this level, you exhaust all your capacity. So producing more using the same plan, for instance, one, the cost gonna start rising. So at this point, you need to make a decision, right? In the long run, you make a decision to adjust your plan size, for instance, to be able to adapt it to the new reality. If not, if you don't make any adjustment, what's gonna happen is you see that the cost gonna start rising. So you don't want that. So you make adjustment once you get to this minimum. Once you get to this minimum, you make adjustment necessary. And that adjustment will keep getting the economy of scale, right? So you get to the plan 2, you get, once you exhaust everything, so you have to make another decision to be able to, and so and so. And once you connect all those minimum costs, so that's where you have your long run average total cost, right? That's where you want to be. Again, the long run, you have that flexibility to make the adjustment. So the long run average total cost, right, which is the kind of big envelope here, right? That envelope or the short run average total cost, if the number of a possible size plan is very large, so the long run average total cost approximate a smooth curve. That's why we have economy of scale, followed by this economy of a scale, right? And it caused this a U-shaped average total cost curve. So now it's in that to explore the concept of economies and these economies of scale. Economies of scale refer to the idea that for a time, a larger plant size, right, lead to lower per unit cost, right? An increase in input where there are economy of a scale will lead to more than a proportionate increase in the output, right? So if there's an economy of scale, an increase in input will lead to more than proportionate increase in output. Why that? Because of we have a labor specialization, right? People specialize themselves in a particular task. They do it good with a high accuracy and high improvement, right? And the managerial specialization also. Specialization also lead to economy of a scale because a manager can manage more workers with no increase in cost, right? Again, the idea is that you specialize yourself in a particular task, the task that you do very well. You increase the accuracy by doing it, also increase the productivity. We have also the efficient capital, right? Efficient capital leads to economy of scale. Why? Because of a higher volume of production, where an expensive large scale of equipment and efficient equipment. Right. Other factor here can be seen as can also lead to economy of scale, right? Things such as design, development, advertising, right? All those costs, right, are spread out over a larger quantity that you produce. And the notion of a constant return to scale happens when the average total cost is constant over a variety of plant size. And when there are constant return to scale, an increase in input will result in a proportionate increase in the output. So the input you put in the resources, it will result in that proportionate increase in output versus when there were economy of a scale, an increase will result, an increase in input will result in more than a proportionate increase in output. Now, this economy of a scale and the concept happen if a firm becomes too large, for instance. A firm becomes too large. As the firm expands over time, right, the expansion may lead to a higher average total cost. So with these economies of scale, an increase in input will result in less than proportionate increase in output. So if you are in that diseconomy of scale and you keep increasing the input, right, like example, labor, you add more labor, the product we will get, the marginal product we get by getting that additional labor, it will decrease versus a previous one. So in that level, you're adding more to your cost compared to what you are getting out. So it's not a smart decision to keep increasing the input if you experience this economy of scale, because you are getting less out. And why there's this economy of scale, right? It happened because you spend beyond a certain level, and now you are challenged, you have to deal with the challenge of coordination, controlling, right? Because too large operation with a challenge of coordination and controlling, right? Bureaucracy is another challenge there. Problem of communication, right? Workers may feel alienated, and therefore they work less efficiently, right? And you will see a problem, a challenge of work avoidance, what we call shirking, right? Shirking, when people are going to avoid to work, going to keep themselves busy. If for the manager, in front of a manager, they keep themselves busy, but once the supervisor or the manager is not there, they take a long break and they are not productive anymore. They avoid to work. So the minimum efficient scale, right, MES, the MES occur when an industry's long-run average total cost determine if there will be many or a few producers, and whether there will be a large, small, or different size. And natural monopoly, which is one of those extreme rare case situation when economy of scale extend beyond the market size. Therefore, it becomes more beneficial for one large firm to produce the output. And that large firm can produce the output more efficiently and cheaper than have a multiple firm on the market. This is a long-run average total cost curve showing industry with extended range of constant return to scale. So producing from Q1 to Q2, this extended area, the cost is still the same. But even though you read the MES at Q1, you benefit also of this extended area of output and maintaining the cost the same. So this industry, the example of industry, will be populated by firms of many different sizes, right? Small and a large scale producer who coexist and be equally successful in this particular industry. So in these cases, industry with economy of a scale over a wide range of output lead to a few large-scale firm, right? Because small firm cannot realize a minimum efficient scale in this industry, right? And will not be able to compete. The long-run average total cost curve is lower when only there's a large output produced. Right? So a small firm cannot compete in this particular industry and will not be successful. Application and illustration of the concept. The rising gasoline prices, right, will cause the short-run costs, such as average, variable cost, and marginal cost, average total cost to rise for the firm that use fuel as input. Example will be like a FedEx logistic firm, for instance, right? So because they use fuel as the main input resources, an increase in gasoline price will impact the cost curve. Whether firm that do not transport product from a location to location won't be affected by the change or the rise in the fuel costs. Right. The startup firm, right, have been successful by lowering the average total cost as they increase output and achieve economy of scale. So it gives them opportunity to spread out the investment in research and development and advertising, right? And it can spread those costs over a large number of output produced. We have also the example of version stamping machine, right? And this machine can produce as many as 5 million of auto part a year. Although the machine itself costs as much as 30 million, right? It can, if you can produce to that level, it can make easier for you to produce quickly and cheaply, right? If you had that large scale production, right? And that will have to achieve economy of scale by buying the version stamping machine. For instance, if you can produce at that level, you have the market for it, and that will help you to produce fast, quickly, and cheaper. Right. We have also the example of the daily news paper. Right. Recently, the newspaper have experienced a decrease in advertising revenue, right, due to the competition they face with internet. And if they write the price of a newspaper, they will sell a few, right? And if they sell a few, that means that they won't be able to cover all the costs, or the average fixed cost will be too high, right? We have also the example of an aircraft and concrete plants, for instance, where the commercial aircraft require a large scale production, which easily achieve economy of a scale and require a few production plants. Right? Require a few production plants because they have that extended economy of scale. If you compare it to concrete plant, they require a small scale production, right? Therefore, there are thousands of those concrete plants,